Hello, dear friends. The individual mystical experience is beyond manipulated relations. Some feel a joyous laughter after connecting, and others weep with emotion, but all find a great loving peace and a powerful serene state of abiding presence. Opinion piece. Drunk with love. Falling of the veils. Divine drunkenness. Doctrine of Oneness. Shiver of Encounter. The poet Rumi defined love. Divine drunkenness of the mystics. Ramakrishna lived drunk with love. Transformation of caterpillar into a butterfly. Pantheism is in Avatar and the Star Wars. Let's start. We are probably familiar with the phrase got drunk, divine drunkenness, and spiritual drunkenness. Divine drunkenness would have been a rare shift of the wise, but it was more common then than it is today. Certainly, the ascended state itself could be linked to divine drunkenness according to Steve Biko. We are light workers, and it would not be useful for us to sit absorbed in bliss and divine intoxication, but to bring the divine light down to earth without losing connection with the source. Something as difficult as swimming and keeping our clothes or walking on a razor's edge. Saint John of the Cross always uses it in this same sense. He seems to know the Sufi exegetical key when he notices in his marinated wine a very great mercy that God gives to the souls of those who make the most of it, that he inebriates them with the Holy Spirit, with the wine of gentle love, which is what God gives to those who are already perfect. In quotes. In other verses in which the memory of Solomon's Song of Songs is evident. In the inner cellar of my beloved I drank. In quotes. We are once again in front of the ecstasy where the soul is transformed into God. Although the Sufis are not the first to use wine or the vineyard as an archetype of spiritual wisdom in mystical literature, after many centuries of use, the equivalence of wine is lexicized and invariably understood as mystical ecstasy. Rumi is very close to the Carmelite poet. The ardor of the wine kindled my breast and flooded my veins, he exclaims, and Saint John would seem to follow him almost verbatim. Just as the drink is diffused and poured through all the limbs and veins of the body, so is this divine communication diffused substantially throughout the soul. If the drink persists and lasts until it fills the veins and joints of the lover with the mysterious lights of God, there comes the saturation, which sometimes reaches the point of losing consciousness of all that is sensible and intelligible, and without the subject being aware of what is said to him nor of what he says. And this is drunkenness. Sufi doctrine. According to the Sufi doctrine of unity, he who knows himself knows his lot. The deepest self-knowledge is the integral awareness of the supra-individual essence of the soul. This essence is identical with the self that encompasses all reality. The knowledge of the essence implies for the consciousness its totalization. It is the spiritual transformation of the distinctive and fragmentary knowledge of the self into the one and infinite consciousness of the self, of the Supreme Being. The self is to the self what the wave is to the sea. Whether the waves are formed or not, the water is what it is. But if the waves are deprived of water, what remains of them? The Drunkenness of Metamorphosis is a novel by the Austrian writer Stefan Zweig. The title refers to the similarity of the protagonists experiences to the process of transformation of the caterpillar into a butterfly. It is set in 1926 and tells the story of the inner transformation of Christine Hoflehner, a civil servant in a post office, from the world of poverty in which she lives as an Austrian after the First World War to the splendid world of hotels and aristocratic society in Switzerland, a country that was spared by tragedy of war only to return to the miserable life she had before. Ramakrishna's case. Let us look at what Avatar Sri Ramakrishna said about this state. Perhaps our recollection of what he said will be triggered during the ascension process, when we are deliriously happy to experience transforming love. He tells us, householders, that it would be improper for us to take the course of being divinely intoxicated, in quotes. Since you are going to lead a householder's life, you cannot be so intoxicated with the thought of God that you will lie naked and unconscious. Much of Ramakrishna's life was in samadhi, drunk with love of God, a state known as prema bhakti. In quotes, an ordinary man couldn't have borne a quarter of that tremendous fervor. It would have burnt him up. I didn't sleep at all for 6 long years. My eyes lost the power to wink. I stood in front of a mirror and tried to close my eyelids with my finger, and I could not. Sri Ramakrishna went through arduous spiritual training to see and talk to the mother, in quotes. I was frightened and said to the mother, "Mother, is that what happens to those who invoke you? I surrendered myself to you, and you gave me this terrible disease." I used to shed tears, but then, suddenly, I was filled with ecstasy. I saw that my body didn't matter. It had no importance. It was a mere trifle. The mother appeared to me and consoled me and freed me from my fear. Having gone through drunkenness for so many years, the sage of Dakshineswar could speak with authority on the subject, in quotes. Some people think that by thinking too much about God, the mind becomes deranged, but that is not true. He tells us, "You attain that madness by meditating on God. Haven't you heard of the madness of love and the madness of knowledge?" Krishna Kishore also went through a state of divine intoxication, when he would repeat only the word Om and lock himself in his room. His relatives thought he was actually insane and called a doctor. Ram Kaviraj of Natagori came to see him. Krishna Kishore told the doctor, "Cure me, sir, all of my illness, please, not of my Om." The divine intoxication made Sri Ramakrishna to be no respecter of person, titles, wealth, etc. In quotes, "In that state of God's intoxication, I used to speak my mind to everyone. I was no respecter of persons. Even to men of position, I wasn't afraid to speak the truth. All one wants to talk about is God or divine matters," in quotes. When you get into such a state of mind, you don't enjoy any conversation that it's not about God. I used to cry when I had people talking about worldly matters. Extreme? I'm not sure. Remember that the basic spiritual movement was detachment from the world and attachment to God. If one is genuinely fervent in one's love for God, is that extreme? Ascension was not much mentioned in Sri Ramakrishna's time in the mid of the late 19th century. He called it Vijnana, but spoke of it very rarely. What he did more often was to relate his experience, such as seeing people like parchment skins full of light stretched over bamboo skeletons, or talking to the mother in the form of a girl. What then seemed a mystical event of the rarest kind, Vijnana or ascension, is something for which our entire planet will soon be preparing. Times have changed, and we may well find ourselves one day divinely intoxicated. Whirling dervishes. Mevlevi is an order or tariqa of whirling dervishes in Turkey, founded by the disciples of the great Sufi poet Jalaluddin Rumi in the 13th century. The center of the order is Konya, Turkey. The Mevlevis are also known as whirling dervishes because they have a dance meditation ceremony called Sama, which consists of a dance accompanied by flute and drum music. The dancers spin on themselves with outstretched arms, symbolizing spiritual ascent towards the truth, accompanied by love and totally liberated from the ego. The ceremony originated among Indian mystics and Turkish Sufis. The Sama, as a Mevlevi ceremony, was proclaimed in 2005 and inscribed in 2008 on the UNESCO representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The Mevlevists attain mystical ecstasy by virtue of the dance Sama, symbolic of the dance of the planets. The Mevlevit dervishes whirl on themselves until they achieve ecstasy. The dance is accompanied by flutes, arable, tambourines, a kind of violins called kamanche, and long-necked lutes like the Turkish Saf. Rumi said, "The Sama is the adornment of the soul that helps the soul to discover love, to experience the chill of encounter, to shed its veils and to feel itself in the presence of God." The Mevlevites were a highly recognized Sufi order within the Ottoman Empire, and among them were several important government officials within the Caliphate. The center of their religion was the city of Konya in Turkey, where Rumi's remains now rest in a mosque that has been converted into a museum. There is also a Mevlevit monastery in Istanbul near the Galata Tower. The Mevlevites gave the world a number of renowned musicians and poets. The Mevlevish order was banned in Turkey by Kemal Atatürk in 1923, but by the 50s the government realized that the dervish dance was a good tourist attraction to bring in foreign currency and allowed the dervishes to perform their ceremony again in Konya on the anniversary of Rumi's death. Today, the dervishes regularly perform at tourist attractions, including music festivals abroad. Doctrine of Oneness. Oneness Doctrine by Steve Biko. All is God. I live in a world where only God exists. Of course, that is something we only realize at higher levels of consciousness, but we can even realize it on an intellectual level. In my opinion, there is only God here, but we just don't know it. Here is God talking to God. Here is God thinking to God. Here is God writing to God. All that is going on is the Great Spirit experiencing more and more through all of us for the Creator's own pleasure. That's all of it. And when I really let that penetrate, it dissolves a large part of every program I have, every preference, like, dislike, etc., and replaces my habitual programming. Recognition that the Creator is playing all the roles, experiencing all the outcomes, everywhere and at all times. The impact of all of them taken together smoothes me in a deeper way than we normally mean by those words. I have shifted the constructed self. Now this is me laying the foundations of my new you. My new program is derived from the voluntary prime directives I am now establishing. I am monarch in my own domain, in my own field of consciousness. The law of free will leaves it up to me how I manage that realm, that bubble of consciousness. Pantheism. The film Avatar takes place in an environment whose inhabitants have totally pantheistic outlook. In the Star Wars saga, the Force is conceived as the energy that lives in all beings in the universe and keeps them connected. Pantheism is a philosophical system of those who believe that the totality of the universe is one God. Pantheism is a worldview and a philosophical doctrine according to which the universe nature and the deity that monotheists call God are equivalent. Pantheism does not stipulate an entity by natural law existing and the universe, the sum of all that was, is, and will be, is represented by the theological concept of what religions call God. Moreover, it is an obvious variation of monism, for the only truth cause primary substance or matter that constitutes the world, according to pantheism, is God. Likewise, pantheism would give rise to the later concept of pantheism, in which the Creator encompasses the universe and its laws, but which goes beyond and is not limited to an equivalence between God and the universe. Examples in history have been Hindu, Brahman, Taoist, Tao, and Buddhist, Buddha, religion. As can be seen, it has been part of the historical construction of Eastern cultures. Furthermore, in ancient Greece, Stoicism, Logos, and Neoplatonism speak of the unity from which all beings come, described by Plato and Aristotle. In different philosophies, such as the medieval Christian philosophy of Nicholas of Cusa, the Muslim philosophy, Allah according to Averroes and Al-Farabi, and the Jewish philosophy conceived by Athizebron, have also had a tendency, and finally modern philosophy such as German idealism, the absolute I, and Hegel's philosophy with the dynamism of nature and the becoming of humankind's history have not escaped the influence of pantheism. By way of clarification, medieval Christian, Jewish, and Muslim philosophy had Neoplatonism as its elementary contribution. The origin of pantheism is attributed to Hindu and Greek philosophy, whose religious texts are said to be the oldest with such ideas. In Hindu Vedanta philosophy, Brahman is the highest reality in the universe. This reality is regarded as the infinite, impersonal, omnipresent, omnipotent, abstract, immanent, and transcendent truth in the universe. While Brahman is the sole foundation of the universe, it is in turn the sum total of what was, is, and will be in the universe. The advancement of ascension. This is a poem. As the world rises, God in humankind's disguises, he beats his drums across the earth, unfold his music to divine plan, make the humankind with the third eye, whispers of the goddess catalyze. The new beginning is quite near, the new crystalline third ear. Here we go, sharing perspectives, billions of consciousness detectives, sweet song born, we attune, memories locked in rock and stone, family and friends, we feel for them. We see each as a precious gem. Angels' wings carry us deep, and gently carries us as we sleep, dreaming, looking at the fractal frame of life, in the infinite field of flickering flame, where little beings subsist in the mind, leaping, dancing through all time. We feel you, Almighty Spirit within. We hear you and see you smile. Thank you, great white light within, for co-creating our sacred journey, up and up and up to the top, where all is supportive. In sync with our cosmic link, everything is turning pink. On the edge of the gravity sink, everything begins to shrink. We walk into a new dimension. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.